Good news, everyone. Hello, it's welcome. It's a new episode of the Linux Lad podcast. My name is Connor.
My name is Mike.
My name is Shane.
Okay, so I believe we have some discussion notes here. So, Mike, any topics you want to talk about?
Well, let's start with the topical news first. The GNOME 3.30 has been released. There are some nice improvements. They are making it work better on low performance devices, and I wonder, is this going to be relevant to the Librem 5, the mythical phone that we might be spotting this time next year, maybe?
Quite possibly. It's been long delayed.
Yeah, they did release a nice video with Karen Sandler's voiceover and very nice hippie graphics, introducing the new release and asking people for more contributions, code and translations and all matter of things. And the video link obviously is going to be in the show notes. The video quite nicely sums up the improvements. It's overall, it's nothing shocking or nothing new. They didn't get rid of the entire graphical stack, and it's not just a black screen. But it looks like nice stable improvements, so well done to them. Another release from the other team from KDE is Plasma 5.14, which is also pretty stable. The biggest thing there from my point of view is that Discover can now update the firmware on the computer, just like GNOME Software Center is. Talking about software centers, unless you guys want to add anything to this, Connor, you put something in the show notes about the Canonical's new effort to make their software center better.
So this is an OMG article. Again, the article will be in the show notes. It's the kind of Canonical is at the moment is just sticking with the default GNOME's software center, and they're saying that maybe doing a redesign, maybe the discoverability of it, in other words, saying these are the featured applications which will drive more traffic towards those applications. They're saying the discoverability of maybe new software that people may not be familiar with could do with a redesign. Just going back to the previous two topics, GNOME 3.30, it's interesting enough, as in it's mainly on the back end and to do with the Librem 5, so maybe there will be some performance improvements, some maybe battery improvements in relation to small devices, and because GNOME is kind of a very touch friendly interface, it's probably good that they're doing improvements for in relation to touch friendly devices such as phones or maybe a tablet or something like that. Plasma 5.14, Plasma has been kind of doing slow but iterative improvements, and Plasma is rock solid as far as I'm concerned. I've been very tempted to make it my default desktop environment in the past, and this is just adding more credence to that, and the fact that they now have the integration with the firmware updates like GNOME introduced, and it was a topic in a previous episode of this podcast where they're saying Lenovo is now introducing these firmware updates, as well as Dell and possibly a few others, so Lenovo has kind of joined that team, and now it seems to be that KDE has introduced that whole functionality. But yeah, some very interesting news in these various topics. Shane, do you have any contributions to these topics?
Yeah, absolutely. On the software center front, I mean, that's pretty good, because I've always found that's a major roadblock for new users to Linux. Just installing software can be a bit of a problem. Like, I know, like in some distros, you'll have 3 different apps for that. You'll have like Synaptic Package Manager, you'll have the stock, if it's an Ubuntu base, you'll have the software manager app that comes with Ubuntu, but then you'll also have like whatever distro specific software center they have. So I know Mint has one, and then Ubuntu Mate has one, which is really good actually, and I think they should all take a leaf out of Mate's book in that regard.
I think it's called the Software Boutique on Ubuntu Mate side of things, and I agree with you. It's very interesting. It's integrated into their welcome screen, their welcome manager. So as you come in saying welcome, welcome screen, and this window pops up and says, here's our forums, our community forums, if you want to go for help. Here's a link to our software boutique. You click there and we'll have things like, do you want to install Firefox? Do you want to install Google Chrome? Do you want to install something like Audacity, which we're recording on at the moment? And it's a simple matter of just going tick, tick, tick. It queues up, and then you can just click install and it will just work its way through them. It's very easy and discoverable in that sense. GNOME software does have the queue up facility as well. It's just, it's not as nicely integrated into a nice welcome screen as soon as you install your new fresh operating system.
How do you guys personally discover software? I mean, I usually use apt or snap on the command line for installing, and if I would appreciate something like Discover to actually start working nicely, it would be because I would like to see recommendations and applications to try. I personally just listen to podcasts and whatever I see, read or hear, but I don't have a way on my KDE desktop to actually see, say, the distributions recommendations very clearly.
I'm mixed. I would, like you said, like Mike, you was saying, I listen to a lot of podcasts, so if the podcast hosts mention a new piece of software, I'll say, ooh, that sounds interesting, I'll go and check that out. Sometimes what I'm doing is I've something in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm looking for something like this for Linux, is it possible, blah blah blah. I'll start Google searching, or there's a very useful website that isn't in our discussion notes but will be in the show notes. It's called alternative2.net, and literally what you do is you go in there, you say, I'm interested in an alternative to Adobe Flash or or Adobe's Photoshop or something like that. Type in Photoshop, and amongst the alternatives will say GIMP, the GNU image manipulation program, is an alternative to Photoshop or something like that. If you want to type in whatever you want, whether it's proprietary or whatever, for whatever platform, and you can drill down very narrowly. If you say, I only want free and open source software that's available for Linux, then you can say this license on this platform. Or if you don't really care, and if it's as long as it's available for Linux, as long as it's available for your platform, that you just say, as long as it's for Linux, I don't really care about the license, then that's fine. Alternative2.net. I've used that in my job in the tech industry, in the support tech industry before. It's very useful.
Yeah, for me, it's discoverability is always a weird thing, because in the Linux world, I always find it's more word of mouth that gets me, that I hear about programs. Like, I won't actually go on to the software center and go, ooh, that looks interesting. I mean, that does happen occasionally, I guess, but most of the time, yeah, it is just someone tells me about it, or I hear it on a podcast, or I read it online or in a YouTube video or something. So yeah, I think it is a good step for them to take to increase that discoverability and have one single thing where the person can go, I want to install some cool apps, like just like an app store. Like, why shouldn't Linux have that?
So I say moving on. So the next one that we have here is a new news article that came out in Phoronix, which is a very good source for your Linux news. Is AMD contributes 8.5 times more code to the Linux kernel than NVIDIA, but is still trailing behind Intel, which is understandable because Intel is kind of the market leader when it comes to contributing code, hardware code to the Linux kernel. But certainly it's a surprise considering that NVIDIA was always the poster boy of, if you want to run games or do any kind of graphics intensive manipulation, if you're in Blender and you're doing 3D rendering or something like that, and you want a beefy graphics card, you'd have to go with NVIDIA with their proprietary their proprietary drivers. But now the news is that AMD seems to be taking it to them and is actually surpassing them in terms of contributions. Mike, you have something to say?
Yeah, no, that's probably because the proprietary driver is not actually part of the kernel. That's why it doesn't get counted into the statistics. So anybody who makes even AMD with, I don't know if they have 30% of that market, if they put everything into the kernel as an open source driver, then they obviously have more contributions than NVIDIA. And also from the article, it's interesting that many of the contributions that NVIDIA gives to the kernel are actually not related to the graphics cards, but to the NVIDIA Tegra system on chip that goes into tablets and the NVIDIA Shield. Basically Android stuff, I think. So yeah, NVIDIA not as great. Another thing, Intel was mentioned there. They again are trying to come up with their own discrete graphics cards. You guys know more about graphics cards than I do. Do you think there's a chance that we will have Team Blue as well as Team Red and Team Green?
I have heard a rumor of that. They have experimented with that. I know that Mike Hugh also watched Linus Tech Tips. I think he had a not meant for public release kind of internal testing graphics card that was supposed to be its own discrete separate graphics card that he somehow got his hands on, so he did a bit of testing on that. So I believe in the past 5 to 10 years Intel have, as an internal projects, have been experimenting with releasing their own dedicated graphics cards. Whether they're going to do that in the future, so Shane?
Yeah, just on the Intel, I mean, we all know that like Intel graphics have been kind of a byword for shite. So like Intel integrated graphics have, never been fantastic. They've always been kind of seen as the budget bin option. So yeah, it's interesting, and it's surprising as well, because I thought like their pedigree in terms of chip manufacturing and architectures, and like they're basically the main name in CPUs these days. I know AMD are making a play with their Ryzen platform, but I don't know, maybe AMD are just learning a few lessons here, and they're seeing that gamers kind of call the shots in the consumer industry when it comes to computers. So that could be interesting, but it would be nice to have a third serious contender in the GPU market, because obviously more competition is better for consumers. So why not? Like, it could drive the price down, better performance, better power consumption. It's all good news as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Just in defense of Intel's dedicated chips, because I've been using them. I don't think I've ever had dedicated integrated chips. I don't think I've ever actually had a dedicated graphics card. And the chips are great because they just fit into laptops. They have got nowhere near as big battery consumption as real graphics cards. And if you don't need to play games or edit videos, then that's enough. And I kind of like that there's that option that if you want a laptop with good battery life, you can have one with Intel chips. But it would be great if they entered as a contestant into the dedicated video card driver market, dedicated video card market as well.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting proposition if they ever do. But at the moment, between Team Green and Team Red, it seems to be that Team Red seems to be the flavour of the month at the moment, and seems to be that the tide is going in that direction, particularly because as you correctly said, everything that they're contributing is going into the kernel rather than it being locked up in the proprietary silos that is the NVIDIA graphics. Full disclosure, I'm running an NVIDIA card in this computer at the moment, but certainly I'll be strongly considering an AMD card for my if I ever do decide to change to a new card, because everything will be supported in the kernel. There'll be no need to go proprietary in the graphics or anything like that.
Yeah, I think from the perspective of like Linux nerds, like obviously we're going to go where the drivers are, and that was a key factor in the graphics card that I picked. for my latest computer. Like, I picked an NVIDIA card specifically because I knew the drivers worked best with Linux. So I know it's probably represents a very tiny portion of their revenue, but it's something to consider, I guess. I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you think that has much of an impact? Maybe not even just in the consumer market, but elsewhere, like enterprise and infrastructure and whatnot.
From the enterprise point of view, I would imagine anything that makes things easier would be better. In other words, if the AMD graphics drivers are just baked into the kernel, and for example, if you're just rolling out kind of graphics workstations and you're saying, okay, I just want to slap an image on, whether it's Ubuntu, whether it's Red Hat, whether it's whatever, just slap an image on here, and have the best hardware support as possible. I would say that slowly that they'll start going the AMD direction, because it's just easier. It's removing a step which will be, oh, now I have to go and install the proprietary drivers on all of these workstations, whereas if it's just inbuilt into the kernel, it's creating it's getting rid of the potential hurdles. So probably the best thing to do would be move on to the next topic, which is an interesting one. It's quite timely at the moment. Is the EU have been voting on what's been termed as Article 13, which is a topic that I know generally about, but would like to know a lot more about. It's, from my rough understanding of it, is that this would be in relation to copyright and automatic copyright strikes. For example, on YouTube, when you upload a piece of music and you get that automatic thing saying this contains a piece of music that's owned by Sony Music or whoever it is, and then you get the automatic strike. There's this new legislation that's being voted on in the EU at the moment, and it's to do all around the legislation of who owns what and how easily it is to defend your copyright. Do either of you guys know more about this topic?
Yeah, I've been again following it probably loosely as you are. I've pressed the buttons on saveyourinternet.eu, or the link is going to be in the show notes.
Yes.
To write the Irish MEPs, and they didn't fail to disappoint, most of them. I think the results of who voted how are actually on the website now, and it shows that 60% of the MEPs from Ireland were in favour
to correct you there, it was 3 Irish MEPs voted no, and I think 1, maybe 2 abstained from the vote or couldn't vote for whatever reason, and then 5 voted in favour. Or no, sorry, 5 voted against the directive, 3 voted in favour, and I think 2 voted just no vote or abstained.
Oh, so I got it completely wrong. I was actually looking at it this morning, so I got it completely wrong, and Ireland was against the Article 13, against the law.
Yeah, and I think actually, this might be a little bit of shit throwing, but I think I'm going to name those 3 MEPs, just so everyone can know.
Go ahead. I see nothing wrong with that.
Know what, who to blame. Yeah, let me just find out their names here. I actually sent them a tweet, all 3 of them, and I actually said, European Parliament elections coming up early 2019. So food for thought. But yeah, anyway, you guys keep talking. I'll find those names.
Yeah, no, it's the interesting thing is in relation to the as a whole, as I said, it was good. The Irish MEPs broadly voted against this new proposal, which was, I think, restricting fair use or something like that. Again, it's all of this is very legalese. I don't have a full grasping on it. But of the 2 that didn't vote on it, one of the MEPs just didn't vote, but from looking at her party, she was from the same party that or a very similar in mindset if not the same party, one of the other parties is very similar in mindset to the party that voted against it. So either probably did want to vote against it but didn't want to be appearing to vote against it, so just didn't vote. And the other one is a guy who's been effectively claiming his MEP salary but not turned up to anything, and he's currently under an investigation, and he's saying that he has a long-term illness. Whether that's true or not is yet to be found out, but he's under investigation at the moment. Of he's been voted in and effectively for the past 4 years hasn't turned up for pretty much anything.
Can you sorry, just to interject,
yeah.
So if I'm looking at the saveyourinternet.e website, it says for or abstention or absence are red, against are green, and Ireland is red. I
don't know if that is the very latest information, but as far as I'm aware, the vast majority of Irish people voted against it.
Yeah, so I think 5 of them voted against introducing the directive, and I actually have the names of those 3 guys who voted to introduce it: Brian Hayes, Deirdre Clune, and Sean Kelly. So write those down and feel free to email them and ask them to explain themselves. All Fine Gael, interestingly enough.
Yeah, it's very surprising. I believe the one person who didn't vote, but whether they wanted to or not, I think they were either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, and they're very closely aligned when it comes to their political philosophies. So it's up to your own speculation whether they wanted to vote against it but didn't want to be appearing to vote against the towing the party line, and just didn't vote in order to save face, or just for whatever reason just didn't turn up on the day. But yeah, the other one I think is Brian Crowley is the MEP who was voted in and effectively hasn't turned up for anything, claiming a long-term illness. Whether that's true or not is yet to be determined, but at the moment he's under investigation for effectively being voted in, getting the salary and then not doing anything.
I should run for the European Parliament. It sounds like a nice cushy job. You know, you fly to Brussels a few times a year, raise your hand and then go home.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm probably oversimplifying it there, but still.
Yeah, no, you're probably. I would say you are oversimplifying it, but from what I've seen, it's quite a well-paid salary, because not only do you get quite a large allowance yourself, but you also get almost 50% again on top of that salary in terms of expenses. Or okay, we realise that you don't live in Brussels, so we're going to give you your salary, and we're also giving you expenses of you'll be able to rent an apartment or something in Brussels, so that you're close to the MEP location, the European Parliament. So it's they're quite generously compensated.
Yeah, that's sickening, really, because I mean I've gone to FOSDEM several times, which is in Brussels, and it's it's a bloody, you can get a return flight for €60, and you pay a few £100 for a hotel and you're set. Put all the MEPs on Ryanair flights.
I mean, yeah, that might be true from Dublin, but they have they have to pay them each the same money, and some of them fly from Prague or Warsaw, and I don't necessarily mind politicians getting reimbursed for their work, as long as because we need politicians. Yeah. We haven't invented system without them yet. So I think they could be doing useful thing, and to my opinion, the EU mostly does useful thing, and just because they messed up this one time. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think is going to happen in the future? I mean, this is possibly now going to pass. It has to go through the national parliaments. Every state has to ratify it, and it has to become the law regionally. So, do you think that this is ever going to actually become
He-
that is going to ever actually properly work.
I just want to qualify what I'm saying. Like, obviously, I think the EU has a good track record with these things. I just want to say I'm not completely shitting on MEPs or the European Union. I think in general it's a great thing, and they generally tend to do the right thing, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that almost makes it worse that they've introduced something like this, because it's like, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed, you know. I'm like, it's like, come on guys, you're better than this. Like, but one thing I will say where the EU absolutely sucks balls is that they really suck at outreach and telling people what they do and why they're doing it. Like, they're really, really bad at PR, and that really needs to change. Like, the European elections come and go, and people are like, huh, what? European what? Like, nobody knows they're even on.
Agreed. Yeah. And again, nothing against individual MEPs. I've been in email discussions with some of the Irish MEPs, particularly the independent ones, and they're well worth their salary, as in it's a personal email back explaining exactly, saying, oh, thank you for your inquiry, I will be voting this way, and I agree with you in relation to your topic, blah 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 blah. It doesn't sound like it's a canned response. I'm sure some of it, due to the volume of the emails that they get, I'm sure some of it is copied and pasted, but it does at least seem to be that it's genuinely coming directly back from the person. Or if it's not full, it will be full disclosure. It will say, I am replying to you from the office of X MEP. I have passed on your message. She has responded saying, thank you for your message, blah blah blah. So in other words, if it is from her secretary or a member of her secretarial staff, at least they're doing full disclosure and saying, oh, I'm not pretending that it's coming from the person themselves. So at least I appreciate that. But that kind of personable response is very good, whereas some of the other ones with the guys likes of MEPs that are represented by or are part of Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil or something like that, you feel like your email is just shouting at the wind. It's effectively doing nothing, and at most you will get a very generic almost automated thank you for your inquiry, blah 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 blah, please ensure that I'm quite busy and I will get back to you whenever possible. And you're just going, I'm no way am I ever going to vote for you again. I'm not saying I did in the past, but definitely not.
Yeah, but
you're just reinforcing my opinion.
I should say, just if anyone wants to call bullshit or shenanigans, I have never once voted in a European Parliament election.
Okay.
I think they tack it on to the general election, basically, don't they? Is that how?
It can vary. It can vary, I think.
Yeah.
I think they're. I think they do it deliberately not to do that. They don't tack it on to a general election in order to prevent confusion.
Okay, yeah. So that's the thing. Like, if I don't even know when or where the elections are happening, I mean, that's already a problem.
I think it's gonna be next year.
Yeah, 2019. I think.
So that I vote in it pretty much because it's the only election that I can actually vote. But I find it important because it's a really good institution that can do a lot of good as well as a lot of harm. So I think and as you said, Shane, they should communicate better. In regards the fact that I don't even know which way the Irish MEPs voted, even though I actually looked it up and I managed to look it up wrong. That says something. This wasn't properly publicized, or people. If I, who have got some moderate interest in the topic, cannot find the correct answer, then how is this meant to be even on any radar of anybody who doesn't really care about tech, even though it's going to massively affect their lives?
The way I believe I found out was either on a Telegram chat or because I followed the EDRI on Twitter. it was. I think both of them published. Somebody in one of the Telegram chats that I've been monitoring, or the EDRI. I think they both provided the information. Whether one provided before the other was I can't remember which order it came in, but literally it was an article saying this is the way the MEPs voted, and you can literally just click on it and then drill down to Ireland and say, oh, so. And that's the way I found out that it was the 3 voted for, and then 2 didn't vote or abstained, and the majority of Irish people voted against.
Do you guys think this law is actually become practical, and we will actually, even say the 3 of us, if we ever run forums, we will have to do content screening for everything that comes that way and just toss out memes and everything for possible infringement?
Quite possibly some stage in the future. I believe that this current vote does not necessarily mean it's the be all and end all, and this is going to be implemented tomorrow. I believe there might be another round of voting, because I think it's just due to nature of the European Parliament. I think it takes a long time for things to happen, as in I believe they voted on Article 13 before, and this more recent vote was a rewording of the same article. It could possibly there's a rumour that it's going up again for vote in 2019. It could be the case of, okay, we're it's just we're particularly interested or particularly conscious of every time that it's going through the European Parliament, and we're tweeting our MEPs again and again and again every time that it comes up. But this could be the normal process, as in things that we're not interested in other words agricultural policy or something like that, could go through the Parliament 3 or 4 or 5 times, and we're just not aware of that. But because this topic is particularly interesting to us, it could be the case of where it's going through 3 or 4 or 5 times, and we're going, for feck's sake, they're not voting on it again. But it could be perfectly normal.
Yeah, I actually looked that up. Just reminded me when you were talking there, Connor. The next stage is that it goes to what's known as trilogues, from what I read. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's a cool word, but whatever. But yeah, trilogues. So I guess it's like a dialogue, but with 3 parts. 3 people talk instead of 2. I don't know. But basically it's like a sit down discussion with the member states, and to talk about how it's going to be implemented on the member state level. And then I think once any EU directive is passed, it's not so much a definite law. It's actually up to the individual member states how they implement it. It's just there's a few. Think of it like, I don't know, in programming terms, like
maybe a recommendation. Is it?
Yeah, it's like a
suggestion.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Instruction.
Like I'm going back to my bloody college days, but it's basically like, here's how it needs to look. This is the general guidelines. This is what the end goal, the end result. How you actually word the law in your own country is up to you.
It's a directive, yeah. But do you guys think that provided this goes around all the houses that it needs to go and becomes a law, do you think it's technically doable? And do you think people will just not ignore it, and actually this is going to be doable and enforceable, and is going to change the way we are consuming and sharing content?
Again, it would have to come down to the specifics when it comes out, if it comes out. At the moment, it's very abstract to me, as in all of these questions of how it's going to be implemented, to what degrees it's going to be implemented, whether you can effectively, if it's implemented, it's kind of, you can do this, but there's kind of techie, geeky ways you can get around it. It all depends to the bottom line of when it's actually coming out in law, if it ever does come out in law. But at the moment, what we're doing is we're encouraging our MEPs to say, listen, what they're proposing isn't exactly the best. Just the general topic idea, whether it's forgetting about the actual implementation of it, but the general idea of, listen, copyright, the copyright holder doesn't necessarily have absolute power, as in fair use exists, parodies exist, that's so on and so forth. It's the idea of, don't let this be totalitarian of, if you have a half a second or even a second sampling of somebody else's work and they're saying, oh, you used our work, then the whole thing has to go down. There has to be an idea of remixes, parodies, that whole fair use thing. So it's more, we're encouraging our MEPs to voting against the extreme version of what could possibly happen, whether or not that actually transpires. Shane, you want to contribute?
Just I was actually, through all the reading I did on this during the week, I found out that there actually is a provision in there if individual content distributors, like say for instance YouTube, they can have a provision whereby it's up to them how they scan for copyright infringement. So basically, but the problem here is that the these kind of politicians, from most of them from a previous generation, they have this idea that technology can do absolutely anything. So they think, oh sure, well you could just set up a content filter that scans it and plucks out the copyrighted material. No, sorry, it's far more complicated than that. And there is a provision there for fair use, of course, like that's not going away. Like, but the only problem is that it's going to create a backlog of like manual content review just to decide, is it fair use or not? Because it'll be picked up by these stupid content filters and it'll just be blocked out of hand. And then you'll have to go into raise a ticket with them to get it manually reviewed to actually decide, is it infringement or not? But that alone is damaging. But it reminds me of that XKCD cartoon I saw before, where it was like, it's like, hey, I want to make an application that will put a bird chirping over a picture or something. I can't remember. I'll find it. But and they said, oh sure, no problem. That'll take a week. And then he's like, oh, can you also have it so that it detects if there's a bird in the picture? And he's like, I'll need 10 years on a research team.
Just while you're talking there, just reminded me, I believe the way it currently is and what's being again, it's all very abstract, but I believe what's being proposed in this Article 13 is the way it exists at the moment is the onus is on the copyright holder to notify the content delivery platform, be it YouTube, be it whatever website, if we have a forum or whoever is the content delivery platform, and the onus is on the copyright holder to inform them in order to go after the copyright infringer. I believe in the Article 13 the onus has shifted away from the copyright holder and onto the content delivery platform, and of course the content delivery platform will just issue a complete and utter blanket ban of no copyrighted material, because we don't know to what degree the copyright holder is happy or okay with something. Somebody might be more severe. In other words, the music industry might be the most extreme version on one end, saying no possible use of any of our copyrighted material or anything like that. Or you could have somebody who's an independent artist who's like, yeah, it's fine if you use samples of my material, bits here and there, I'm okay with it. The content delivery platform is not going to know, so they'll have to go with the most extreme version, whereas at the moment it exists is up to the copyright holder to notify, in which case there is flexibility there of, yeah, I'm fine with that version, or I'm fine with that parody, or whatever, or no, flat no. So it's the content delivery platform is not going to know, so they're probably going to go with the most extreme version of that.
Yeah, but like, yeah, it's not gonna. Like some people are saying, it's gonna completely murder memes and fair use and everything. Like that's not actually gonna happen. Like there will fair use is still, it's still a defense. So but it's more that it's gonna create such red tape and bureaucracy and messing about that, like, it will effectively strangle creators. But yeah, like, fair use isn't completely going away or anything like that.
That's good. That's good to hear. We're not going to a totalitarian freaking V for Vendetta or 1984 type scenario.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. Yeah, exactly. It's just, yeah, like you were saying, it just puts the onus on people delivering content to check for these things. But obviously, that's going to create. So that in itself is going to create so many problems. Like, you're going to have to employ teams of people to, like, handle all these, like, case disputes, and, like, it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, shouldn't the solution then be dispose of copyright completely? I mean, it's not.
I wouldn't go that extreme.
Yeah, some people.
I would.
Some people are into that idea of copyleft and everything, like, where it's like a softer copyright, or I don't know. I think copyright kind of has its place. It's not perfect, but I can't think of a better system, so I don't know.
Well, just philosophically, right? You have an idea and you create a song, but the idea is not completely yours. You obviously learn music from somebody, and you've been listening to music your entire life. So whatever you do, it's a bit of you, but also a bit of everybody and everything that you've had and experienced before. And you're not going to pay those people, are you? So technically, it's just it's not that the works that you do is always completely yours. And maybe we should rethink all this. Like, I know it sounds a really, like, off-word idea at the moment, but it's becoming very, very strangling and very inconvenient to even follow up with this. Maybe it's a concept that belongs to the last century, and we should just say, well, whatever, like, whatever you create, as long as there is no physical expense, just put it out there, and if somebody uses it, well, that's for the better. We just need to figure out a way of reimbursing people for their effort. And I think that, like, holding on to copyright and desperately protecting it as desperately protecting the status quo sort of doesn't allow the discussion about what could happen next.
I am a bit of a pragmatist when it comes to this. I understand the whole copy left argument, but also there's single consumable bits of completely and utterly proprietary, copyrighted, whatever for example, a movie, a TV episode, a video game, or something like that. It's a single consumable thing. I'm hardly going to deep dive, go into it and say, that's interesting, that's an interesting video game. I'm going to dismantle it and then create my own version of the video game. And there are open source video games in which you can do that, but I'm also perfectly fine with, this is a video game, I get my 2 or 3 hours entertainment, or if it's a particularly long in-depth storyline and particularly good video game, I can get endless hours of but I keep going back to that one individual video game. Same thing with the TV episode. That's been my hours entertainment for that TV episode. That's been my hour and a half to 2 hours to 2.5 hour entertainment. When it comes to a movie, I'm perfectly fine with that being their copyrighted works. And of course they have built upon the shoulders of giants. In other words, video game ideas and video game implementation of how the game works and the style of the game, whether it's a first person shooter or RTS, turn-based strategy, whichever type of game it is. There's been precursors, there's been ideas that is saying, okay, we're going to stand on the shoulders of giants, but we're going to change the formula slightly, and either the formula works or the formula doesn't work, and then the next version says, that person changed something but the formula worked, so we could re-implement upon that. but the whole so the ideas themselves are open source in a way. It's just the implementations of them could be proprietary. Same thing with a TV show or a movie. In other words, this camera shot or this lighting technique or this camera angle or this way or this camera technique that created a certain effect, it would be extremely hard to copyright anything like that. So those kind of things can be rehashed and improved upon, but the whole thing of I've written this script is my own unique idea, and then that's copyrightable, and if you wish to create a sequel or a parody or something like that, then you must approach me in order for me to grant you the rights. I can see both sides of the argument.
Yeah, it's kind of like I mean, it's pretty, like, in some instances it gets ridiculous, I agree, Mike, but like if I was to use say 5 minutes of footage from like Starship Troopers or something in a YouTube video, and I was making money off that YouTube video, I kind of see their point. I mean, like, if you're using something that someone else created as a product to sell for money, in your own product to sell for money, then yeah, fair enough. It all comes down to money, basically. It's like, who's getting paid? That's what copyright's all about.
But I think that's something we could be able to rethink and do differently if only the discussion was even allowed to start. But because everybody, as soon as you say, and that's not to you guys, but if you say to a regular person, or God forbid a politician, or somebody who has got a stake in or a share in like Virgin or HMI, if you tell them maybe we should abolish copyright, they are like, oh my God, no, communism, go away. So I think this is it's negative in the discussion dimension if we are just basically saying no, it's not doable. I think it's worth a try, and people are always saying, well, I did something, I worked hard on it, why should anybody be allowed to use it for free? That's how open source works, and it's a provable business model. And I think if it's transferable to media as well and to games, people just have to stop being afraid, really, and try to find a solution rather than just cling to something that clearly isn't working, because copyright isn't working. It's, you can in the time when you can basically go on the Pirate Bay and have everything, and you are committing a crime, but it's not possible to reinforce. This is all just pretense, really, in my opinion.
I'm not saying that he is the absolute bastion of the Linux reporting or the Linux personality atmosphere or ecosystem, but there was actually a really interesting interview that Brian Lunduke did with Richard Stallman, and yes, it was Brian Lunduke that I was referring to when I said it wasn't really exactly the bastion of the Linux community. But in one of the questions that he asked Richard Stallman was, and I don't know his exact answer off the top of my head, but I would encourage people to look it up, is, does Richard Stallman actually listen to music? Does he listen to copyrighted material? Does he? And I think Richard Stallman is fine with I can't remember to what degree did he draw the line, whether he was fine with purchasing CDs as long from an artist or something like that. But yeah, Richard Stallman does listen to music. I think he listens to kind of Peruvian pipe music or something like that. But that was an interest. Everyone asked Richard Stallman about software. So I thought it was an interesting interview question to approach it from a completely different angle and say, Richard Stallman, do you watch TV shows? Do you watch movies? Do you listen to music? Do you consume potentially copyrighted entertainment media? So it's, in that point, if you look that up, that one individual episode that where he does that interview, I think it's on Brian Lundug's YouTube channel. Look up that one individual episode. I think that's worth seeing. I'm not necessarily endorsing the individual himself, but you can make up the listeners of this podcast can make up their own mind in relation to whether they like the personality of Brian Lundug or not. But that one individual episode I would recommend that people look up, because I found it quite interesting.
Yeah, I think it's like last year, April or something. I remember listening to it, and it was really interesting. Yeah, Shane or Connor, do you have anything else to add to the copyright debate, or did we beat the horse to its death and beyond?
We could talk about this for about 2 to 3 hours and still not get to the bottom of it. So
no, we cannot. I don't think anybody would want to listen to that.
I'm happy with moving on to a potential new episode. Mike, do you have new episode, new topic? Mike, do you have a topic in mind, or?
Yeah, I have, because this has been so like serious and intense. I think we should go to your entry and just talk about the wobbly windows apparently coming back. Connor, you put it in there. Justify yourself.
Going from a serious topic to a not so serious topic. Wobbly windows was the reason I put it in there. It was kind of very nostalgic. I certainly do remember the days of Gnome 2 with Compiz and the wobbly windows and the fire effects and the water effects and the 3D cube and all those novelty features that some people were using at the time to say, we're going to wow Mac users and wow Windows users. Look, we can do this 3D cube, and look, when you press the X button to close a window on Linux, it burns combusts as if it's on fire, and there's a flame effect and everything like that. So it's more to do with nostalgia, the very fact that there's a re-implementation of this, and you're going to be able to do it on a more modern software stack rather than the Compiz window manager. It was pure nostalgia is the reason why I put this in. Do you guys have any thoughts in relation to it?
Just before we forget to source it, this is from OMG Ubuntu article.
OMG Ubuntu, yeah.
Yeah, the link is going to be in the show notes for people to read. But guys, have you ever actually had that on your desktop? I have. It was horrible. It's not coming back, not to my desktop ever.
I did have the wobbly windows. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I'm not sorry.
They were only set to minimal.
I'm not sorry, but
yeah,
it was great in 2008, but I think it should stay there, In fact, it's, as they say, 2008 is on the phone, and it's wobbly windows back. So.
I had a great really funny episode happen in college. Like, our lecturer had a Linux laptop that he was doing his slides on. He had it hooked up to the projector, and I don't know why he didn't know this, but maybe it wasn't his laptop, or maybe it was a loaner or something, I don't know, but there was Compiz effects on all the windows, and he was using like Ubuntu, and he was trying to get the slides into the projector display, but like the windows kept like wobbling like crazy. Like he would try and like move the windows and they just stretch and wobble all over the place, and he wasn't able to move them properly. It was so ridiculous. And I was just like, dude, how do you, like, if you don't know what's going on, why did you switch this on? Like, it's like, it was so weird. But it was so bad. Like, the wobbliness was so much that he could barely use the laptop. Like, he couldn't move windows around properly. It was terrible.
And putting credence into KDE, and Mike is going to love this. If you scroll down, the top voted comment on it is KDE users know it never went away.
That's true.
I believe with KWin you've always been able to do these kind of effects if you want to.
Yeah, there is a whole page in the settings that allow you things like this, and I have it all turned off. It's all turned off by default, because once you get beyond the novelty factor, it's just in the way, really. You want your windows to open snappily and close snappily and move the way you want it to move. You don't want them to like do weird things and basically look comical. Also, I think, and maybe that's a good question, in my opinion, the whole, say, fashion or trend, the way the graphical desktop looks, and not only on laptops but also on mobiles, it all has gone really to simplifying stuff to make it more utilitarian. So this kind of thing would no longer be popular this year, because people like their material design and their flat icons and everything in 3 basic colors and that kind of thing. What do you guys think?
Mike, did you yourself not once say that Linux is choice?
That's true, yeah. And thank you very much for throwing it in my face. It is choice, it's true, but we also, as everybody else, are slaves to trends. So, I'm looking at a dark screen with dark windows in dark mode, and I'm pretty sure that's the case for most of the people, if not everybody, on this podcast.
It matches me too. It matches my dark heart.
Oh yeah, the darkness within.
Yeah, all we do is listen to death metal. We dress in black and we have dark themes on our desktop.
So just in case you were wondering what we look like, that's what we look like.
Connor, Aerosmith is not death metal.
True. This is very true.
So, shall we move on to something else?
Yeah, I think there are some erections to mention.
Oh God, this section isn't going away, is it? Yeah, go on. Someone say it.
This part is going to be edited out, but definitely to making the transition smoother. Then I believe we have some erections to talk about.
Every time you say we're going to edit this out, I almost intentionally don't edit it out, because it's always really good.
That's I think how it should be done, really, because it's funny. So in terms of a jingle, should we have like what is it, like a boner jingle?
I don't think we should do a jingle.
Like, is that a Viagra tone or something?
No. Like that? For the listeners, they're talking as if we're going to cut this out, but I'm totally leaving it in.
Yeah, I mean,
okay. So this is Linux boner section. So Mike, I believe you've had a Linux boner since we've been talking last.
Yes, I have. I actually have a permanent Linux boner. It's so-called Linux priapism. This time it's supported by something called Qt browser. Many people actually know about it. It's a browser written in PyQt, so it's Python and Qt or Qt, I don't know, and I don't really care. It's a browser that supports Vim-like keyboard shortcuts to the maximum. So you want to scroll down, you press the J key. You want to scroll up, you press the K key. You use these shortcuts to go to different tabs, to go back and forth in your history, to open pages, to close pages. You can even record macros. It's absolutely amazing. There will be a website in the show notes, and I wholeheartedly recommend people using it for productivity and bragging rights purposes.
I've never really been much of a keyboard warrior, but I do appreciate keyboard shortcuts in a minimal sense. I've never completely just gone over to a keyboard interface, but it's for people. I understand there's the i3 window manager where it's very keyboard centric and something like that. So this browser certainly would be very useful. I can see it being very useful. Maybe not for me, but I can see it being very useful.
You know, all the people who are telling you how greatly productive they are in their keyboard is actually, we are too lazy to move our hand a bit to the right where the mouse is. And also at work, I have a very good mechanical keyboard and a really rubbish cheap plasticky mouse, so I tend to touch the keyboard because it's kind of more pleasant.
Yeah, me too. I actually work on a Mac, so I've kind of gotten pretty used to all the Mac keyboard shortcuts. But it's also ergonomics plays a factor as well, like you said. I mean, if my hands are comfortable on the keyboard and I don't want to move them, I'll use the shortcut. But if I just don't feel like it, I'll just use the mouse.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be able to use i3 because that means that you're completely relying on the keyboard, and there are times, and many times a day, where I just want to point and click. So for me, it's about half and half.
I'm more of a GUI kind of mouse interface kind of person. I don't tend to even do the command line commands, but I understand that the command line commands are very useful, so I use them occasionally, but mainly I just kind of live in the kind of mouse centric, because that's the way I've got used to using computers. From when I was on Windows to when I'm now on Linux, is I've just got used to the mouse centric interface. So Shane, I believe you have a Linux boner.
I have a whopping Linux boner. It's not Linux really, but it's related. I remember an episode or two ago we spoke about how shit the Irish government was about data and open data and tech in general. Well, I found this week data.gov.ie, an entire website with thousands upon thousands of open data sets published by the Irish government. And it's really, really good, surprisingly. Fantastic website. Obviously, link will be in show notes. But I geeked out for about an hour looking through this thing. There is multiple formats. There is multiple APIs. For instance, you have file types that people haven't even heard of, like a .shp shapefile, which is used in GIS, Geographic Information Systems, where you can basically get like constituency boundaries and administrative boundaries and stuff, and overlay them on a map and stuff. You can do some absolutely crazy shit with this data. It's amazing. I mean, it gets me very excited and very, very enthusiastic. Maybe other people won't think so, but yeah, I love it. Like, there's like CSV and TSV files for everything you can imagine: census data, electoral regions, housing patterns, social patterns. There's APIs for the public transport, like just crazy shit. Like, there's so much stuff there. I think I'll try. What I'm going to try to do is actually pick out some interesting data and maybe do a video on how you can actually use it. That's something I really want to do on my YouTube channel that I have sadly neglected for quite a while. But yeah, that's a really good idea, I think, because people would look at that and go, okay, that's fine, but what the fuck do I do with it? So that's what I want to do. I want to find some, I don't know, maybe the listeners could have some suggestions if they want to go on there and have a look and give us some tips and just mention some information on there that would be genuinely useful or interesting to people. I'm all ears.
Yeah, certainly. I did follow the link. Did go to data.gov.ie, but it was a bit overwhelming for me. It was I downloaded one or two files. And I'm like, whoa, this is way more powerful than I even expected, and I've no idea what even to do with this. So I'm just going to back away slowly. It was all a bit much, a bit intimidating for me, but I can certainly see the application, and the very fact that they're just information is like, yep, it's up there, have at it. It's in all these different file formats. That's very useful.
Yeah, it's completely baller in a geek sense of the word. One thing that bowled me over was how well it's all organized. You can filter it by like file format, and you can filter it by various metrics or whatever. So like, it's a really well designed interface as well for the website, so it helps you find what you need quite easily. I'm going to sit down and spend some time with it and actually download a few of the data sets and perhaps come up with some concrete examples of some cool stuff you can do with the data. So yeah, that's my BONER.
The one that I have listed down here, just for the sake of putting something in there, is a program that I've used quite a bit. It's called QBitTorrent, and what it is a Qt re-implementation of uTorrent, or it used to be called muTorrent or microTorrent, but uTorrent 2.x. uTorrent has since moved on to 3.x and has become really kind of proprietary. It's like all what the upsell is, and we can give you more features, but you're going to have to pay for them. And they kind of redesigned it, and they kind of made it really shit. The peak of uTorrent user interface, for me at least, in terms of usability, was their 2.x branch, and of course that was only available for Windows. I believe you can get it running under Wine, but QBitTorrent is a Qt re-implementation of it. Is completely cross-platform, is actively developed. There's a stable branch, there's a nightly branch if you want to live on, or development branch if you want to live on the bleeding edge. It's really actively developed, and it just completely emulates I can't even speak. It's completely and utterly just emulates, that's the word I'm trying to think of, emulates the user interface of uTorrent 2.x. In other words, that familiarity of it, but taking that ball and rolling with it. And as I said, it's written in Qt, and of course for those interested, it's all free and open source software that I'm like Linux ISOs and fair use and like Creative Commons content that I'm downloading on my uTorrent.
I was going to say, like, you're definitely just downloading ISO files with that, of course, right?
Yeah, and Creative Commons music files. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I believe that's it. So I have been Connor.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Shane.
And thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.